Hey, this is Betsy Veldman with the next Make It Monday. Today we're going to be making this card, and I'm going to be showing you some techniques for using a blending tool and your paper tray inks to give some edges of your cards and die cuts and such some soft color around the edges. And also we're going to take it one step further, and I'm going to show you how you can create some really pretty backgrounds using just the blending tool and ink on plain cardstock. Alright, let's get started. The blending tool that I'm using today is from Ranger, and it's just a handle with a sponge on the end with some interchangeable pads. The first thing I'm going to show you is this label. I'm going to show you how I just put some soft color around the edges with my blending tool and some ink. So here's my label that I die cut using Matte Stack 4, and I'm going to use dark chocolate ink. I'm just going to kind of stamp the blending tool onto the ink pad first, and then I just like to stamp it once onto a piece of scratch paper to get rid of kind of that excess ink so I don't have a big solid blob. And then I just put it onto my die cut and I rub in a circular motion just to really blend it and make it a nice soft effect. So I'm just going to go all the way around my edges that way. Just a great way to add a little bit of color. You can do this with any color, it doesn't have to be brown. If you're not into the distressed look, you can definitely choose a brighter color. There, I have my edges all finished, all done blending around the whole shape. Now I'm going to take a true black ink and I'm going to stamp a sentiment, and this sentiment is from Through the Trees. Now I'm going to show you how to get some different background effects using different ink colors. I used kind of a gradient technique. I started with one color in the center and worked my way out to the edges just using the blending tool. So here's all the inks that I'm going to use. I'm going to start off in the center with Aqua Mist, and then I'm going to work my way out with Sweet Blush, Summer Sunrise, Orange Zest, and finally finish it off with some Pure Poppy around the edges. I'm going to start off with a 3.5 by 5.5 inch piece of cardstock. This is Vintage Cream. Now this blending tool, it has pads on the bottom of it, and I'd like to use one for each color family. So, and they're really easy to interchange, to take off and switch out. They're just on a hook and loop tape, and so I can just pull one pad off and replace it with another color. So I'm going to get rid of my brown pad, and I'm going to put on a pad that I had used earlier with some Aqua Mist ink on it. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. I'm going to dab it into my ink. I'm just going to start in the center and just work in a circular motion and blend outward. Now that I have the center as dark as I want, I'm going to move on to my next color. My next color is Sweet Blush. I'm going to change my pad again. I'm going to start on the outer edges of where I left off with the Aqua Mist, and just again work in a circular motion and just continue blending and working outward. My next color is Summer Sunrise. Same thing, just change my pad and pick up where I left off, working outward again towards those outer edges, building the color as I go. Next up is Orange Zest. Picking up where I left off with the Summer Sunrise, just adding more color and getting it the color a little deeper, a little darker as I go out to the edges. Almost creates kind of a sunset look. You can do this with any colors. You don't have to do it with the color palette that I chose here. I'll show you in a minute how I used the same technique and the exact same stamps, but changed out my ink colors to create a totally different look for more of a springtime card. And I'm just going to keep building and keep inking till I get it as dark and as vibrant as I want it. Now I'm going to move on to my Pure Poppy ink. Change my pad once again. Now I'm just going to do the very outer edges with the Pure Poppy. You can see as I was working, I was getting closer to the edge, and now with the Pure Poppy, I'm just going to do the very outer edges. If you think you have a spot that just ended up too dark, just keep blending, keep working it, and it should work in. Keep rubbing and keep blending, and it's just going to blend right in. I'm going to leave the bottom edge without the Pure Poppy, and I'm going to add a little green to that bottom edge to make the baseline for my trees, kind of a grass line for my trees. I'm going to use some ripe avocado ink and my green pad. There, I have my cardstock blended to look just the way I want it. So now we're going to move on to assembling the card. I'm going to take my dark chocolate ink with the 3 tree stamp from Through the Trees, and I'm going to stamp it so that the tree tops are kind of nestled in that highlighted, that lighter portion in the middle of my cardstock. Remember where we started with the aqua mist ink way in the center? Now I'm going to stamp a little bit into the background using a background basics textile. And I don't want to stamp the whole background. I'm just going to take my stamp and I'm going to stamp the areas that are the darkest around the edges, just to give it a little more depth. And I'm using Smoky Shadow ink. And see how I'm kind of hitting just that deepest Pure Poppy edges. Alright, now we're going to add the label that we had inked at the beginning of the video. I'm just going to add some adhesive across the entire thing. And I'm going to adhere it kind of at the top edge, letting it hang over. Make sure I have it straight. And I'm just going to flip it over and I'm going to fold that top to the back side. And there's adhesive on the whole thing, so I can just kind of press it down and we're good to go. Now I'm going to adhere it to my card base. I have a 5.5 by 4 inch craft cardstock base. I'm going to put it so there's a little bit of the craft cardstock showing above and below my stamped piece. I'm going to wrap some twine around the top. And tie that into a bow, and I'll top it off with a button. Here I have a rustic button threaded with some twine, and I'll just tie it around my bow. And there you have it. I also wanted to show you a second card I made with the same technique, the same stamps. I just changed my ink colors. I started off this time with Sweet Blush in the center and worked my way out with Aqua Mist and Spring Moss ink. I gave it a real springtime effect. I used the same tree stamp. I'm just going to stamp that here a minute. And I took a white paint pen and I added some little dots to mimic the look of the springtime blossoms. It's kind of fun to see how I could take the same supplies, the same stamps, and create a totally different look just by changing out my ink colors that I created my background with. Here's the finished card. You can see that I also stamped some birds from the set, and I stamped the text in fresh snow instead of the smoky shadow like we did on the other one. And here my label again, I did the same thing. I just used Aqua Mist ink instead of the dark chocolate that we used on the first card. Just gives a totally different look. It's kind of fun to mix it up and see what I could do just with some basic supplies. Alright, this has been Make It Monday for Paper Tray Ink with Betsy Veldman. Thanks for watching.